Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on Keeping Stress Levels in Check on the Farm. I'm Glennis McClure, and I'm here today with Brandy Vandewaal. And we'll do some quick introductions, but we did a similar webinar back in April. And so some of you may have joined us then, and it's very, very similar. We do have some added, we've kind of changed things. We've learned a lot this last year as we've been doing programs on stress, in particular with the rural community, and definitely farmers are close to our heart. I'm a farmer, and Brandy, you?
I grew up on a farm. Right. We have some 4-H farm animals at our house as well.
Yeah, okay. So, and we thank Angie Rushman is over in the Dean's office helping us with the webinar. We're broadcasting out of Philly Hall here on East Campus. And so I think we'll go ahead and get started with things. I think we're going to put in the chat box for you a link that has, it's a box file link, and the link will have handouts that we'll be referring to today, or just in general for you to take a look at. And also there will be a copy of the presentation slides in that box file. So you should have that. And so I think Angie, has that link, and she'll put that into the chat for us. So we appreciate that. And so we'll mention those as we go along. But just a little bit further introduction. We both mentioned we have farm background. I reside down in the south of Beatrice area, and we actually have a poultry farm. And right now we do rent out our crop ground. I've actually going on about 40 years with my husband now, and so we've been through a lot. I'm an ag economics person here, and I do farm and ranch management work and for the department. But I worked back in the 80s when we really had sort of the farm crisis back then. And again, being from the farm, we lived through that. And so I've seen a lot of things, on the farm, and understand stress in many ways, I guess, coming from the farm. We had to make some major changes back in the 80s. It's just been part of our life. And so I really understand that. And yes, I don't like stress, but we're going to try to give you some ideas or help messages throughout here of things that you might be able to do and think about on the stress side of it. So Brandy, would you like to say something about yourself?
Yes, so I'm Brandy Vandewaal. I'm a Nebraska Extension educator, actually housed in Fillmore County. And I grew up on a farm, and I also work with farmers a lot on, I've done pesticide training programming. I've done Farmers and Ranchers College program, but I also have a strong youth component and kind of understand, when mom and dad are stressed on the farm, some of the stress impacts and stuff that those kids can see. And so, yeah, farming and agriculture is near and dear to my heart as well.
Right, good, okay. So we'll go on into the presentation here.
So, kind of why is this program? We're going to talk just a little bit about the program elements that we'll have for today. So, agriculture is a stressful occupation. It's important that we understand how to manage our stress levels and reduce the effects of unwanted stress. So we'll get into the definition of stress. We'll go into some coping mechanisms to handle stress. And we all know when we have too much stress and when we get in too big of a hurry, it can make us more accident prone and can also contribute to a lot of health issues. So again, we'll examine some of those symptoms, how to recognize stress, not only in ourselves, but in others, because we all deal with stress a little bit differently. And then finally, we'll talk about ways to reduce stress and also to help others. So hopefully you don't have a very stressful job like this gentleman. He's been feeling a little stressed at work lately. Maybe you don't have this stress, but sometimes even the smallest little things that happen can magnify and can turn into these really, huge issues later on. So.
Okay, so we do have a poll question that we're going to put up. So Angie's going to do that for us. And so we'd like for you to, well, here we are, we're in the holidays, and that's kind of why we thought it would be good to do this program today, because for some reason, I think we try to do a lot in our lives, and so How do the holidays make you feel? During this time of year, does your stress level grow? Looks like we're answering the poll question. We appreciate that. And it's pretty overwhelming that, yes, during the holidays, our stress level grows. It's kind of what you're telling us. I know mine does.
Yep, we all kind of try to cram in so many different things, and maybe sometimes have unrealistic expectations, I think, about ourselves as well.
I was just thinking about this too. On top of it being the holidays and, farming as a business, and most of us have the fiscal year ends at the end of December. So on top of the holidays, what I'm doing a lot of times is finishing up those records and starting to think about taxes. That's not stressful at all, is it? No. So anyway, so there's just a lot of things that can contribute this time of year to what's going on. So
it looks like about 92% of you, pretty much all but one, are stressed and do feel kind of stressed during those holiday seasons. So we're not alone, Glynis.
That's right.
There are other ones there. So yep, Angie, you could or we'll minimize that.
Take down that.
Very
Okay.
good. Mm-hmm. So kind of like we said, I love the holiday season. I love getting together with family and friends. I just put kind of a list of things. I'm sure you all have these as well as many other things that are very busy during the time of year. So while we enjoy it, we also can sometimes have those unrealistic expectations on ourselves. And the stress is very real. When we look at on the farm and ranch, we not only have, the gift giving, the family and friend expectations or programs we have to go to, but like Glenna said, we have those end of year activities. When it's cold and icy like this, someone has to still get out there and, break the ice and feed those livestock that are on those stalks. And so the downturn in the agricultural economy and all the weather related disasters we had here certainly has not helped our situation at all. And my colleague, Holly Hatton Bowers, actually shared an article that pointed out that the American Psychological Association found that U.S. people do tend to feel more stressed around the holidays. So we're not the only ones that feel that stress. So we're going to talk about some ways to, what's on there? Can you click on it?
I don't know. It's not advancing. Okay.
I think we froze here.
We froze. Well, speaking of freezing.
Well,
right?
Speaking of stress.
So
we may just want to stop the share and reshare.
Okay, we'll do that
and we'll reshare. So we want to do this.
Screen, yep.
Okay, so you want to go to the next one. Why is it doing that?
Well,
great.
we stop again.
Stop share.
Okay, so hit escape on your keyboard because that PowerPoint is probably what's doing it. And then
It doesn't seem to do anything. Okay, so we'll try that again.
Okay.
Should we just go to the PowerPoint or to the screen?
well, you want to do the full screen since you have that video.
I don't know that it, sorry, technical issues.
Oh, there it goes. Okay.
All right.
So my colleague Holly Hattenbauer had shared 7 tips that can survive the holidays. So I'm just going to kind of share these briefly here. First of all, challenge your thinking. Sometimes we might tell ourselves little stories and kind of make some things up that maybe lead to more stress. So, are you being fair to yourself? Are you setting those high expectations? You're just kind of asking yourself, is this true? Is this really happening? And am I being kind to myself? Am I giving myself enough credit? And also just thinking about what can I learn from this experience? If doing something every year just stresses you out, maybe you need to think in the future about changing that a little bit. Secondly, setting intentions to eat for healthy gains, sleep, and move. So we all know that there are so many delicious treats and sweets during the holidays, and it's certainly okay to have, some of those things and everything. However, just remember to eat some healthy foods, so that you have a net gain of well-being and aren't, getting kind of those sugar highs and lows and kind of creating your, creating those issues health-wise for you and getting plenty of water in. Also, just movement, moving around every 20 minutes for at least 2 minutes And then also making intentions to sleep, just trying to stick with your normal sleep schedule and not having too much screen time are also ways that can help. Also, reaching out and connecting with your support system. So checking in with a friend or a family member. If you're having a lot of difficulty feeling alone, and sometimes the holidays, especially some of those, bring up the feelings of loss. Maybe there's a family member that has passed away within the past year or so. Those are normal feelings to have that kind of loneliness. But if things get really rough, reach out to a mental health expert. There's a lot of help that can do.
One of the things here lately that has really stuck with me is that we're used to, when we're feeling physically ill and something's wrong, we're used to going to the doctor. And we had a speaker recently reinforce to our extension folks that, mental health should be thought of the same way. So if we're feeling down, we're feeling, that things are just overwhelming, think of it as your physical health, same thing. Go, find some help, find some professional help.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, so.
Very good point.
Mm-hmm.
And also number 4, plan and budget expenses. Sometimes you have a big list of all kinds of people you want to get presents for, and really sticking to a list and, not kind of going overboard. It's easy to want to put things on a charge card, but then that can add a lot more stress later. So really kind of sticking with a plan. And number 5, embrace the messy. I always have to work with this. Events do not always go as planned. It's not always a wonderful Hallmark movie like you see. And so just kind of going with the flow, kind of stop and realize, is this a real big issue? And, it could also be embraced with the messy house. Sometimes I need to work on that and just realize, we're having fun, we're creating memories, and just having that flexibility. The last 2 then, create a to-do list or a done list. So there's so many things that we do, and we don't even think about that as being a huge accomplishment. So if you have a lot of things that are done already, create a done list, and it gives you kind of that sense of accomplishment, and anything different from the routine, it can kind of help you feel like, yeah, I did get some things accomplished. And then I love this last one, number 7, is cultivating gratitude. We might think of, oh, we don't have this or this happened, but just really kind of making a list of, 4 to 5 things, whether it's, people, experiences, just the things that you're grateful for, can really, kind of put things in perspective when you're handling a lot of that stress.
That's a great list. Thank you.
Yeah.
And that's one thing, we've been doing a lot of work here this last year on this topic, and every time I sit down and think about this, I think, oh yeah, I should be doing that. And I really should be sort of walking the talk, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But I learn every time we talk about these things, actually, so.
Absolutely.
All right. So can stress be both good and bad? Can you think of things when stress can be sort of good? I think about my 3 children getting married within about 3 years of each other. And having all those weddings, and, yes, it's stressful, but it's kind of a good stress too. It's a happy stress. So that they call that eustress, okay?
And it can motivate us, right?
It can motivate us, exactly. Exactly, yeah. So, of course, we often think about stress as being bad, and it really can turn bad if it just goes on, and you don't do some things just like what Brandy shared with us as far as handling our stress as well as best we can. So that's when things go bad for a while, then we're into that distress mode. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go through a list of things, kind of bringing us back to the farm-related stresses. And we know there's a lot of those, and there's quite a list here. Let's take a look at those. Yes, weather challenges. We didn't know, I know we went to training on this topic last January, and we didn't know, we knew that winter was bad, because I know the day I flew out, it was a blizzard. And I know campus was closed, and I eventually made it to Michigan to do this, but it was kind of a crazy weather time. And then it just lingered on, as we know, with the bomb cyclone happening to us in March, and then, and all that we've had to deal with in Nebraska. So definitely this last year speaks to us really strongly about the weather challenges that we see in agriculture. Crop production risks, there's a lot of that sort of management that has to go on with our weeds and our insects and all of those types of things can add to our stress. Livestock production, again, the weather had a great effect on, in a lot of places, our cow-calf and our livestock growth this last year. That doesn't have to be just the weather, it can be disease and some other things that enter in, and those stresses can happen. Of course, machinery breakdowns, we never know when that's going to happen. I'm sure a lot of people right now are trying to do some maintenance so that, their breakdowns are prevented, but you just never know when something like that could happen. Debt loads, again, as finances become more of a challenge, some may be adding a little bit to their debt load, and and working through those issues can be really a challenge to us at times. The volatile markets, we really haven't had a lot of volatility. It's just that they've been sort of lackluster, definitely, and with some of our trade issues and so on. So that markets really can affect how we think of things and our stress. And also working with others on the farm and ranch. One generation may think about doing certain things, and the next generation doesn't always agree. So obviously in a business setting, no matter what it is, that's always a challenge, is working with all of those that you have. And then we try to put in those long days sometimes, with harvest and planting season, haying, all of those kinds of things. So we have that sleep deprivation. I know last year, again, with the calving season, I know, again, a lot of people run into real issues with that too, because of the challenges that we've had with all of that. Government regulations. We're doing a series of Farm Bill meetings now through Extension, just to learn about the new programs, and there's all those decisions that need to be made. At least, those can change from time to time, obviously, but just kind of figuring some of that out can really add some stress to our lives. Okay.
So we kind of have a poll now that we'd like for you all to see, which of these ag-related factors contribute the most to your stress level. And so go ahead and kind of take your pick there. And certainly there are probably, many other things that are even not on our list. So go ahead and vote.
And your top 2 or 3. Got the answers coming in here.
It looks like weather challenges and debt loads are certainly kind of the high of everyone's list there.
Right, so finances and
And sometimes too, with the multi-generation farmer ranch, that stress of not losing that land or not losing that ground and stuff is a lot of pressure, that we put on ourselves as well.
Right.
So just kind of last chance to kind of vote here.
Okay, looks like we've got answers in. So again, the weather challenges and the debt loads, looks like 2/3 of you have really identified those as being big factors in your stress. Livestock production was right up there. I would imagine some of that might have to do with some of the weather issues we've had. And then, some other things that we've talked about. Someone voted for machinery breakdowns, volatile markets, and multi-generational issues were those that were marked. So thank you. We'll click out of that.
So the next slide just really kind of shows.
Oh, this is what's happening.
With the poll somehow.
The poll is causing us some issues. All right, so I'm going to escape. I guess, will I escape?
Yep, I think I should escape.
We'll see if it, so when we click on the poll, that's where we get the issues. Okay. Great.
Speaking of stress again.
Stress. Technology works when it works, right? Okay, now, is it going to go on?
So click in the PowerPoint on the slide.
Okay.
Now use the arrow key on the keyboard.
Oh, there we go. Thank you.
So a little comic relief here. Aside from ulcers, heart attacks, bypass surgery, drug and alcohol problems with broken families, a little hard work never hurt anyone. Of course, that's not true. But Glennis is going to talk about how when we have that distress over continued periods of time, how these can all cause some different health issues within our bodies.
Right, actually, symptoms of stress can affect our body, our mind, and our actions. I know in our handouts we do have is kind of a nice piece where you could look at this and identify when you're feeling stressed, really what does it do to, does it affect your body more or your mind more or your actions? So like your body, do you feel like an upset stomach? Sometimes you might feel like you're in a fog. Body, you might be fatigued or nauseated. Some people grind their teeth, that kind of thing, or your muscle cramps up. So those are kind of the body symptoms that might be occurring. Your thoughts and your feelings or your mind. Are you easily angered when you're stressed? You're feeling exhausted, can't concentrate, kind of you get that foggy feeling and you just can't think. I know sometimes when I'm really sort of that acutely stressed, it's like, wow, I got to pull back and say, no, think, focus, right?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Of course, some people might cry, be really restless, feel really bored, and then, they can't sleep again. And so your actions. So what kinds of things do people do when they're stressed? We might overeat.
Yeah,
Or
some people, get mad and kick or hit a wall or something, and
they
then
kind of show their anger.
kind of have regret. Yeah, some of those things.
Yeah.
Or, acting out on others. You come home and unfortunately whoever, the spouse or kids or whoever's there might kind of get the brunt of that situation.
Right. Or, some people take to drinking or they might smoke more. And so, under eating, overeating. So some people might not just feel like eating at all, so these things can really, affect us. But I think it's really important that we learn to manage our stress level and to sort of decrease that unwanted stress as best we can, so. All right, so I think this video we're gonna click on is just a short video that talks to us about the effects of stress and what it does to our bodies. So let's see if we get this to working, okay?
Cramming for a test? Trying to get more done than you have time to do? Stress is a feeling we all experience when we are challenged or overwhelmed. But more than just an emotion, stress is a hardwired physical response that travels throughout your entire body. In the short term, stress can be advantageous, but when activated too often or too long, your primitive fight or flight stress response not only changes your brain, but also damages many of the other organs and cells throughout your body. Your adrenal gland releases the stress hormones cortisol, epinephrine, also known as adrenaline, and norepinephrine. As these hormones travel through your bloodstream, they easily reach your blood vessels and heart. Adrenaline causes your heart to beat faster and raises your blood pressure, over time causing hypertension. Cortisol can also cause the endothelium, or inner lining of blood vessels, to not function normally. Scientists now know that this is an early step in triggering the process of atherosclerosis, or cholesterol plaque buildup in your arteries. Together, these changes increase your chances of a heart attack or stroke. When your brain senses stress, it activates your autonomic nervous system. Through this network of nerve connections, your big brain communicates stress to your enteric or intestinal nervous system. Besides causing butterflies in your stomach, this brain-gut connection can disturb the natural rhythmic contractions that move food through your gut. leading to irritable bowel syndrome, and can increase your gut sensitivity to acid, making you more likely to feel heartburn. Via the gut's nervous system, stress can also change the composition and function of your gut bacteria, which may affect your digestive and overall health. Speaking of digestion, does chronic stress affect your waistline? Well, yes. Cortisol can increase your appetite. It tells your body to replenish your energy stores with energy-dense foods and carbs, causing you to crave comfort foods. High levels of cortisol can also cause you to put on those extra calories as visceral or deep belly fat. This type of fat doesn't just make it harder to button your pants. It is an organ that actively releases hormones and immune system chemicals called cytokines that can increase your risk of developing chronic diseases such as heart disease and insulin resistance. Meanwhile, stress hormones affect immune cells in a variety of ways. Initially, they help prepare to fight invaders and heal after injury, but chronic stress can dampen the function of some immune cells, make you more susceptible to infections, and slow the rate you heal. Want to live a long life? You may have to curb your chronic stress. That's because it has even been associated with shortened telomeres, the shoelace tip ends of chromosomes that measure a cell's age. Telomeres cap chromosomes to allow DNA to get copied every time a cell divides without damaging the cell's genetic code. And they shorten with each cell division. When telomeres become too short, a cell can no longer divide, and it dies. As if all that weren't enough, chronic stress has even more ways it can sabotage your health, including acne, hair loss, sexual dysfunction, headaches, muscle tension, difficulty concentrating, fatigue, and irritability. So, what does all this mean for you? Your life will always be filled with stressful situations, but what matters to your brain and entire body is how you respond to that stress. If you can view those situations as challenges you can control and master, rather than as threats that are insurmountable, you will perform better in the short run and stay healthy in the long run.
All right. So there was a lot in that video about how really our bodies are affected, which overall can, kind of get to our mind and everything. So, but your body's response to stress is supposed to protect you. But if it's constant, that's one of the main messages here, it can really harm you. So, and there was mention in the video about the hormone cortisol. And it's released in response to stress. And studies suggest that high levels of cortisol from long-term stress can increase our blood cholesterol, triglycerides, and blood pressure. And these are common risk factors for heart disease, as we know. This stress can also cause changes that promote the buildup of plaque deposits in our arteries, and it can alter our immune system, affect our mood, fears, and motivation. So cortisol is really sort of problematic if it's there for a long time. And so one of the tips that I read was that just a brisk 10-minute walk can help reduce our cortisol levels in our brain by 50 to 70%. So that's just a quick, easy way of, when you're really feeling like things are just caving in on you a little bit, just taking that walk and breathing and so on can really help. So. All right. So we wanted to share with you, even though this survey and this report was done in 2016-2017 timeframe, and this came out of our Department of Ag Economics, and when we wanted to bring this back up, even though it's kind of old data, we kind of think that there's a lot of similarities. Of course, this hasn't been updated just this last year. But just with what's happened with us, we wanted you to know that really you're not alone. If you look back at this data from several years ago, producers at that time were concerned about obtaining their operating capital. So there was a high percentage of those surveyed that said that. And there were concerns at that time about interest rates. We never know what interest rates are going to do, although we know the Fed has, really kind of worked to keep things down. And obviously they monitor our whole economic situation. And, fortunately we haven't had, with high debt loads, we haven't had the interest rates really creep up terribly. And back in the 80s, that was one of the main factors that happened with high debt loads, and then there was, a higher rate of interest, and so it was really tough to monitor and to service that debt. And so, and then with this, but half the survey participants felt that their overall financial condition would worsen, while 46% anticipated it would stay about the same for 2017. So it was kind of a 50-50 split. So at that point in time, and I'm just going to guess that we're probably at that point again right now. And so you can kind of see some of these figures. We just wanted to share with you that this, again, several years of data that's a few years old, but that there was real concerns at that point in time. So, so we're not alone in the farm sector as far as what's going on or what has been going on.
So now let's just kind of talk a little bit more about some other ways we can cope with our stress. So our UNL Wellness Center had just 5 little kind of stressless tips. So the first one is to build some gaps into your day to ensure you have time for a mental break. So, it's really important that, you don't try to cram 10 or 20 different things into your schedule if those are not, feasible. Just try to allow some gaps, because things are going to happen. Something might break, and then you're kind of setting yourself up for failure. Also being assertive. This one I know I personally struggle with, learning when to say yes or no. It could be, anything, even a volunteer opportunity, and just really maybe sleeping on it, taking some time to really think, talk to those who it'll impact and say, should I really be doing this, or maybe maybe now's not the right time. And taking time off. Certainly we understand on the farm and ranch, those livestock have to be fed, crops have to come out. But trying to find some ways that you can incorporate, some time off. It doesn't even have to be off of the farm, but just taking kind of a little mental break, spending time with kids and family, playing with your kids outside of the swing set. Just some little tiny ways that you can take that time off, or find, neighbors and family that can come over and help you out, so you can maybe just take an afternoon or a day or two off. Also, like Glenda's talked about, walking the walk. Again, just getting some kind of physical activity certainly will build those feel-good endorphins. And, sometimes if you're doing all of that bookwork or financial record keeping and stuff right now, if you just start getting really stressed, just kind of walk away for a little bit. Take a little bit of time just to maybe walk to the driveway, get the mail, do something like that. And then talk the talk. So, just visiting with somebody, letting, starting that conversation with a family, a friend, or some people really like to journal and just kind of write down, what it is that you're feeling. Those are all just some little things that we can do that'll kind of help us cope with some of the stress that we might be feeling. Hopefully, what we do not want you to do is to handle stress by getting angry, turning into a huge green monster and smashing everything that gets in the way. That's not a very effective stress management program. And so then my colleague from Ohio State University came up with some other stress-reducing activities or actions. Some of these include eating a well-balanced diet, again, trying to exercise, half an hour a day, every other day, or every day. And it doesn't have to be all at once. If you break it up into chunks, again, that can be very helpful for you as well. Getting enough sleep. Our body and our brains need that chance to really kind of recharge and reset. And when we're not getting enough sleep, that can really impact the way that we handle things and can even think clearly. Accepting that stress is a part of life and not dwelling on it. So it kind of comes with that flexibility and kind of putting things into perspective. If something breaks down, yes, it's going to cause a lot of stress, but try not to dwell on it and trying to really kind of think about putting things in perspective. And then this one's always really hard when you have you know, those multi-generational families is defining home and work responsibilities and kind of separating those with work and family time. You know, something might, you might disagree with some family member about a certain situation, but, you know, when it comes time to Christmas or, you know, the holiday settings, just kind of trying to set that work part aside and just filling those roles of a family member. Managing time efficiently as well as effectively and setting those realistic goals are really important. Again, if you have too many goals on your list or your radar, it might not be practical to get those done. And if you're a list person like myself, if you got some things done that were not on your list, go ahead and write those down if it gives you some sense of accomplishment. And then learning, you know, just learning to relax. And we've got some other good ways that you can relax and some ideas here in a little bit we'll go over.
Mm-hmm. So I think we're ready for another poll.
Oh, yes, we are.
So go ahead.
Yeah, this time we would like to know what would you consider your top 2 ways that help you reduce stress? So we kind of have a list of some ideas there, and so kind of thinking about what are some things that maybe help you handle.
So it's an extensive list. I think you can scroll down too. But also if there's ideas that you have that aren't on this list, you can always just jot those into the chat box and share those if you want to. And again, I should say if you have questions, go ahead and use the chat box and Angie will let us know if we have any chats that we need to address, or any questions we need to address. So I don't know. It works good for me.
So it looks like, getting some exercise, some activity is kind of leaning at the top of 67%. Again, that is a really good way to handle that and just kind of figuring out when and what works best for you, whether it's morning, afternoon, night, or breaking it up in chunks. I love that idea too. Mm-hmm. Managing time efficiently and effectively and getting enough sleep. And sleep is always one of those things that should be easy, but sometimes when we stress about things, we can't sleep. So try to find those ways that you can unplug and giving yourself to relax can really help. So I think we can probably end our poll and move on, but exercise came up as a top one. So that's a very good thing to do there. I don't see any suggestions.
Okay.
So very good.
Yeah. If there are others that you thought of, that's great. I know I shared last time that, when I've been really stressed at times, just getting away and going to a movie, just doing something totally different, get my mind off of what was stressing me, might be something to do. So, all right. So there is a handout included on cultivating a productive mindset, and farmers, I like to think of farmers definitely as productive people. They're very generally optimists and they're usually risk takers, but there are times when we're overwhelmed by all the variabilities, as we've already talked about in agriculture. But I think it's a little bit of it is just working to have the right mindset to help us increase our personal productivity and our resiliency. So Michigan State, this piece came from them. So as far as some 3, I think, key suggestions that come out of that is that, again, this is included in your handouts, but to use positive self-talk. Think of 3 words to help you keep a positive mindset. Some suggestions are like staying calm, that I'm capable and I can handle, I can be in control, and there's, so think of things that might help you with your positive, to try to keep a positive mindset. And then we've mentioned already, but breathing. I think this is one of the things that I've used more here lately, is that when I get really sort of stressed, just stopping and doing some breathing. And they shared with us that kind of doing that box, kind of looking at a box where you're breathing in and then breathing out and then breathing in and breathing out, kind of using that box and kind of doing a controlled kind of heavy, kind of deep breathing can help us sort of accept and to think about, we can move on. And so using acceptance and focusing on solutions, maybe making the word accept and you mentioned that already too, is that, you know, we can't always be in control, but we can accept that, well, yeah, there are breakdowns, and yes, there are weather issues, and you know, we know that's going to happen. We accept that, and rather than dwelling on the problem.
Yeah, I always think, you know, focus on the solution. So if there's a problem, what's a solution? And, you know, try to focus that way.
Exactly. We've also included this in your handouts. We kind of think there's a lot of good suggestions on here. I know I liked, it may be hard for you to see here, but you'll have it in your handouts again, but giving yourself permission to pause. Again, with the busyness of the day, that pausing, that breathing, you know, maybe taking time for the walk, because we said if you're really feeling stressed, that walk can do you a lot of good.
Yeah, I know some of the other things on here recently, especially with the holidays, the volunteering, you know, in church groups and stuff is up there. And, you know, we have this big Christmas store, and so I've involved my family with it, and we, you know, we're able to kind of orchestrate something and help give to those who maybe don't have the resources. And it really does make a person feel good, and also put things in perspective of, you know, maybe how fortunate we are, you know, and some of those things.
I mean, I marked, I think, like playing cards, again, just visiting with friends, being with friends. I know we had, you know, some friends that asked us over the other night, and even though we're all so busy, and there's like a ton of things we could do, but it was really kind of nice just to take a break and go and sit and visit with some people, you know, and to do something fun together.
One of the best tips I've recently heard from a friend is that they specifically get together at a restaurant every, I don't know, 3 months or so, and before they leave, they set a time, so they have to stick to that. You know, because it's easier to,
Right.
to say, oh, we'll get together, but unless you really solidify that time and that date, you know, it can be really hard. So, you know, I'm sure you all have many other ideas. These are just some other things to think about.
Good.
Another one I just kind of wanted to highlight talks about having access to, you know, those mental health professionals. And sometimes, you know, I think as farmers or ranchers, we fear going to maybe a counselor or someone because we're not sure that they're going to understand our lifestyle and how we live. And I always think it's just like if you go and you try one and you don't quite click, and then try another one. You know, I've gone to, you know, medical doctors before, and maybe I wasn't happy with the answer that they gave me. And so I've tried another one, and then it kind of clicks. So, you know, there are, you know, just finding that special person that you kind of click with to talk about things.
Good point, for sure. So, you know, we've heard a lot about Nebraska Strong. I really liked when we added this, as far as our extension work here this year, is reaching out is Nebraska Strong. So we're going to kind of turn now, is once you understand kind of your stress levels, and kind of what you can do to manage stress, is kind of, as we know, our rural communities, there's other people that have a lot of stress, and what can we do to sort of reach out and to help them. So Nebraska Extension for sure has been reaching out with disaster resources, and has really encouraged us all as extension educators to do what we can to reach out and to help. And this is kind of part of what Brandy and I are doing today, is we're doing the webinar because we want to help you for sure. So, and again, we want you to we want to help you think about how you can recognize high levels of stress or distress in others. And I think one of the key messages here is when you have an opportunity is sort of take time to listen, really be an active listener. And I think of it in terms of just really showing that you care, you know, because, you know, somebody could be talking to me and I might not really be paying attention like I should. But I think if I really have that caring heart to really listen, I'm going to try to understand where they're coming from and think about what I can do to help. And also, you'll see there's a list of resources, but in particular, would really like to have you keep in mind that we are very blessed in our state to have the Rural Response Hotline, and they've been very, very busy. But keep that number close in hand. And also, we're going to talk a little bit here about the suicide issue, and suicide prevention hotline number should be kept, you know, handy, so that as you encounter others that are really stressed, and you know, you visit with them about that, you've got that handy as a resource.
So now looking at how we can assist others that are in some true distress. So again, we talked about some of those symptoms earlier on recognizing those signs of distress and, you know, realizing that other people are going to experience stress maybe a little bit differently than you. But if you do recognize some of those, or a person has just kind of changed the way that they normally operate, you know, it's okay to express a concern and kind of ask them about their situation. And again, having that active, empathetic listening, and, you know, just kind of letting them know, like, you know, is everything going okay? And, you know, just kind of starting that conversation. But then, you know, also kind of understanding the warning signs. If somebody is truly, truly struggling and, you know, you just kind of know that something is not right. A majority of people that have actually attempted suicide at some point have given kind of a clue or a warning to somebody. And so don't ignore, you know, those remarks or references to death or suicide. And, you know, one of the myths that we hear a lot of is that, oh, if I ask somebody, you know, if they're thinking about committing suicide or, you know, hurting themselves or anything, you know, people think, well, then they're going to think about doing that. And that's absolutely a myth. You know, by actually asking somebody, then, you know, usually they'll, you know, kind of confess and say, oh, you know, I was, and they just need to know that somebody else cares about them. And I always think it's best to lose, you know, lose a friend over it, or someone might be mad at you and think, well, how could you think that I feel that way? But rather than losing that person and having to kind of live with some of that guilt. And so if you do, you know, ask somebody, have you thought about, you know, committing suicide or anything, you know, then sitting with that person, do not leave that person alone. And like Lena said, calling the suicide hotline or getting them to a mental health professional, taking them to a hospital, and just making sure that that they're getting the help that they actually need, and follow up with them. If you tell them you're going to, you know, to help them, then, you know, make sure you follow up with them.
That's right. That's right. And I know one of the handouts also that could be really helpful, sort of in follow up to this, is there's a North Dakota State Extension publication that we've included called Responding to Distressed People. So that might be one of the handouts that you want to take a look at to learn more about kind of how we should handle those situations.
And so, like Glenna said earlier, we might be Nebraska strong, but don't be too strong to reach out for help. And, you know, being strong really does asking for that help when you need that. And so here are some resources that we have available. Also, a lot of extension offices have some little cards that you can put in your wallet, you know, in case you experience somebody having these situations, so that you have easy access to these phone numbers should that situation actually arrive. Also, we have compiled a list of some resources that are in your, will be in that box folder that we were talking about earlier. And so it has a good list, and kind of, I like this because it describes, you know, what it is that you need, and the hours, and some of that help. So just remember, you know, you're not alone. We care about you. And so here are some other UNL resources that we have dealing with stress and disaster. We have our family stress website. Our CrocWatch website also has compiled some awareness of farm stress. And then we continually update, you know, our flood website, as we know people are still recovering from some of those instances. So we have reached pretty much the end of our slides here. We have our phone numbers as well as emails there. If you do have a question, feel free to type that into the chat box. After this webinar, we will send out an email to you that will have an evaluation link. So we just have a few questions. We just kind of, you know, want to know what you thought about this webinar. We'll also send a link that'll have the resources that we have alluded to on there. So anything else?
Yeah, I think that's it. But yeah, you've got our contact information. If there's anything you'd like to discuss further, let us know. We've also been doing programs, you know, in-person workshops, especially with folks that are working directly with farmers, ag professionals. So if you know of where that could be useful, just talk to us about what else we can provide for training on these topics. So thank you so much for taking time today, and have happy holidays. Keep your stress level down.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.